Hi, Kiko.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been listening to the Nebraska soundtrack for about the past week, along with On Swift Horses, of course, but I'm a
Yeah.
big Nebraska fan. I think I'm a little bit
Uh-huh.
biased because I used to play the trumpet in
Oh yeah.
high school. So
Right, right, right. Yeah, we didn't, let me think. There's no brass on Swift Horses.
no, there's not. I don't think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There might have been there's one cue where there's some tucked in, but it's not thematic. It's not like lyrical brass the way it is with
Right. Yeah.
Nebraska. Yeah.
There's such
Yeah.
different stories. I mean,
Yeah, right.
what initially drew you to On Swift Horses, and how did you connect with the story through music?
Yeah, well, Daniel Minahan was a fan of
Hmm.
mine, and he actually got in touch early. I started writing from a script, so this is one of those projects where I hadn't even seen the film. They were nearly done, I think, with pre-production, but I actually wrote a suite of pieces, and sometimes when I do that, I'll just do maybe a half a dozen kind of based on characters or some thematic thing I might want to explore later.
Hmm.
Also, just to start the conversation with the director. In this case, I actually wrote quite a bit of music. Between myself and my writing partner, I think we had, 20 pieces or so
Yeah.
written. We just had some real ideas about some character themes as well as some kind of like general themes of like desire and longing and some of the stuff that's central to the narrative anyway.
Right.
So
Yeah, the
yeah,
film,
so
of course, is set in the 1950s and has this romantic tone to it. So how did
yeah.
you balance that period authenticity with the emotional storytelling, do you think?
We went back and forth about that a lot. I mean, especially he was a big fan of the Holdovers score, also from
Hmm.
Pain, that I'd done, which was really, I mean, that film was really it was trying to feel like a film that had been released in the 70s, not just one that was set in the
Right.
70s. So we were really going after score that like never betrayed it. I mean, it wasn't like putting on a 70s hat or I don't know what, it wasn't exactly that,
Right.
but it was definitely going after something that never betrayed the time period. That wasn't the directive for this film, honestly. There was some talk about like, he loves guitar and so I knew it was going to be a more performative score even though we get more orchestral later in the film as the drama kind of builds but he had we had talked about some Link Ray tracks like some earliest sort of electric and surfish kind of stuff but
Oh,
like
cool.
really
Yeah.
50s version of that and so that all did find its way in but I would say that it was more important to him that we were capturing moods and emotions than we were, the last thing he would want to do is something like more kind of Ken Burns and feel like authenticity just for that sake. It really that wasn't as important to him. So there are definitely moments where I'm stepping out way outside of anything that would happen in the 50s guitar wise.
Mm.
And he really liked that. I mean, he even referenced things like the Lounge Lizards and, some edgier like New York stuff because the important thing for him was that these relationships, especially the same sex relationships that are in the film, there's so much danger in the 50s for that.
Right.
It's not just the sort of like butterflies in the stomach, the excitement of love and all that. There's also like real risk, and he really wanted the music to reflect that. So
Yeah, on that note, I mean, you're talking about relationships and maybe specific characters. Were there any emotional arcs that kind of developed for those relationships or characters, or maybe particular musical motifs or themes that you used for anything like that?
yeah, well, it's funny, and this does have something in common with Nebraska and several other films that I've worked on, and that is central to the film. The two main characters, they meet early on in the first
Hmm.
several scenes, and then they part. They're separate for most of the film. So they're living these parallel lives, and Daisy Edgar Jones's character Muriel is really obsessed with her brother-in-law Jacob. It's unclear what the nature of the obsession is. It's kind of like a soulmate thing, but maybe she sort of has fallen for him as well. but she starts to emulate parts of his life just through like phone calls and occasional sort of like correspondence. She starts having same-sex relationships the way he has been. She's gambling the way that he has been. And so in terms of your question, musically, I wanted to have a theme that could kind of like work and morph for both of them
Hmm.
because they're kind of like they have these similar paths. So I wanted there to be a difference, but I didn't want it to be starkly different. I wanted it to be sort of like a reflection. And that's more what I played with. I would say that, both of them still get their own due in terms of a thematic development because their stories ultimately diverge to a degree by the end, and there's a bit more sort of overt danger in Jacob Elordi's character, who's
Right.
Julius' story. Anyway, so yeah, so then of course as that's happening, the music's going to reflect that. But yeah, it was kind of a funny thing of like I'm writing separate themes for them, but at the same time I'm
Hmm.
wanting them to be like reflections of one another.
That's awesome. I love that. Many of your scores use unconventional instruments. I think I saw one of a video of you playing a waterphone, which is the very first time I'd ever seen anything like that before.
Uh-huh.
It's amazing. How do you
Yeah.
decide what instruments or textures uh, will define, the palette of a particular project?
Yeah, I mean, I think I come from the school. Well, maybe I was brought up this way. I have a dad that was a conductor, and I took composition
Right.
lessons early and all that. And one of the things I'm always looking for is ways to kind of like break the mold, even if I'm operating within it. Even if even if the right thing is something that's somewhat known for a project in terms of instrumentation, in terms of, my compositional approach, I'm still looking for ways to kind of, push at it and see ways that I can kind of make it my own. And one of the ways I do that is performatively because I play all manner of like guitar and plucked strings,
Hmm.
all manner of keyboard, and all manner of percussion. So all of that is, you can see some of it behind me, but I the way I've chosen to do that came a lot, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but it came
Yeah.
a lot out of a band that I had, before I was scoring full time. I had this group that was a kind of fine arts center trio
Is
of
that Tin
violin.
Hat?
Yeah, that's Tin Hat Trio. So that was violin, guitar, and accordion, and so it could kind of cross over into chamber music, but we toured for Blue Note too, and we did jazz stuff. We kind of like skated between those worlds a bit. Another way we did that though is by not choosing electronics so much, but choosing to like use extended techniques and kind of extended instrumentation based on those families of instruments. So we're going to prepare a piano or find some old reed organs and maybe we're retuning them. We're going to use prepared guitar or some other strange door-to-door instruments from 1870 or whatever, some weird auto harps or marxophones, ukuleleles, those kinds of things. And over time, I collected that stuff, and I just like the performative aspect of it, and I think that's it's not always the case. There's plenty of times where I'm just writing for an orchestra, a choir, something like that, and
Right.
I'm not getting involved performatively, but it's definitely my preference or my kind of obsession is to see what I can tuck in, even if it is a couple waterphone notes here or there in an
Yeah.
orchestra.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
interested in knowing what are some of your favorite just everyday sounds? Like, what do you like? What is sweet to your own ear? And maybe on the opposite end of the spectrum, what kind of sounds kind of are grating to you?
Yeah, let's see. What sounds sweet to my own ear? Well, I would say actually something, maybe this is a bit of an aside, but there is something that I've been doing a lot of for maybe the last 5 years. And that is I play lap guitars, so guitars
Hmm.
that you play with a slide,
Right.
but I play them with an ebow.
Oh,
And
nice.
so a little magnet in my right hand that excites the strings rather than having to pluck them. And so the attack of it ends up being a lot like a bow. That's why it's called an ebow. It's just a magnet that's suspended over a string. The combination of that and the slide has a real vocal quality to it. It can
Hmm.
sound like a theremin. It can sound like a musical saw, those kinds of things. But I've been working a lot with that and tucking that sound in, sometimes using it to double melodies and to kind of it gives it its own flavor. And honestly, it doesn't relate to much else. It I like that about it. It's a signature thing for me. I've also been using that sound to for some recordings outside of film. Like I've been doing this stuff where I'm taking Bella Bartok's three-part pieces for women's choir and transcribing them for just EBOs because it has that vocal quality. So been doing some stuff like that. So I love that sound. To me, that's a beautiful sound, and I love the sound of reeds generally, I would say. I had a group for a time that was three clarinets and a reed organ, and I love, big sort of reedy sounds, especially low end. That's something I'm super drawn to. I
Mm-hmm.
often will do that same thing of doubling, even sometimes like in the Sony Pictures film I did called 12 Mighty Orphans,
Mm-hmm.
set in the 20s. I even after recording the orchestra, I went in and did some low end doubles with like my bigger pump organ, which goes down very low. It goes down to, the lowest note of an extended bass, so low C. And I would go through and like kind of do doubles that way to flesh it out. I honestly, not to, this is another total aside, but I got really interested in this because I got really into this piece. Bluebeard's Castle. It's a Bartok piece that is a kind of opera for just a couple people, but it has and it's orchestral, but it's a lot of the orchestra is doubled with pipe organ,
Mm, okay.
and it has a sound that is like as big as anything I've ever seen. Big as, I don't know what, Yes in Madison Square Garden or something. I mean, gigantic, and that really appealed to me, and I I've tried to run with that in places too.
That's
So
awesome.
as far as sounds I don't like, well, even the sounds that I don't like, I kind of like. Um, I mean, I would say that, I grew up somewhat in the 80s, so there are some DX7 sounds, some synth sounds from that era that make my skin crawl. But on the other hand, I just, a year or now it's 2 years ago, I guess I did Muscles and Mayhem with director Jared Hess, who's got all kinds of press right now for Minecraft.
Right.
But the writer director of Napoleon Dynamite, we did a series for Netflix on the American Gladiators, and we got back and revisited all the 80s and 90s stuff, and it was a blast. But
That's awesome.
but it's also, for me, that's not stuff that not what I want to be listening to on my deathbed or whatever. Yeah,
Definitely. I'll make this
no,
my last question, but and it's probably because I watch way too many films. But
yeah,
when I'm watching something, I can right away tell if I've heard that composer before.
okay,
And
yeah,
it really hits with somebody like Thomas Newman. It's just all his
mm,
movies kind of just like flow into each other, which I like a lot. I like that
yeah.
I see
I'm a
that in
tremendous
him.
fan of his, so yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So do you consider would you like to be known as a composer like that where you can kind of connect the sound, or would you do you go into each project hoping that they're distinct from one another?
Yeah, still trying to answer succinctly. I would say that, my career is different than some in that I
Right.
came into it through licensing. I mean,
Hmm.
that's really the truth. I had the requisite skill set. I was an experienced engineer. I went to conservatories, dad conductor, had the orchestral chops as a writer. And then I had this performative thing that I do. But
Right.
truthfully, the first whole bunch of films, they were alongside my touring, and they were really based on that tin hat sound.
Right.
Um, and so when you talk about whether I'd want to be sort of like recognized that way, I think I was for a time because it was so much connected to that.
Right.
But that also is a kind of pigeonholing thing where I want to say I don't just do this avant-garde trio thing, chamber music. I actually write for orchestra. I actually do, you know, like performative electric rock bandish stuff or whatever. And so I think that over time it's been fun for me to have those opportunities and expand out, which gets away from the idea of having like a more sort of recognizable this is that sound thing.
Right.
So so it's kind of like a yes and no because I love the challenge of kind of expanding beyond instrumentation that I've worked with a lot. But I'd never want to just sort of be jack of all trades in terms of aesthetic. I still think that I'd want to keep this kind of performative aspect, this handmade quality in the music, no matter what I'm doing, like across genres, no matter whether I'm doing, a Civil War piece versus a
Right.
1950s versus something futuristic or fantastical, I'm still going to try to keep that in there. And so, yeah, I think in that sense, yes, I'd like people to recognize my e-bro, as I call it,
Well, it
my
does. It
Evo
sounds like the
dobro.
film industry is perfect for you because I mean, you get all these different types of stories and kind of are able to
Yeah.
like work your way around them and figure out, the intricacies of each narrative. So that's
That's true. And I will just say one other thing, which is that I found film to be really satisfying when I have other outlets as well,
Mm,
honestly. So
right.
I am still working podcasts. I'm doing This American Life music. I'm doing, I am still working with some dance companies. I'm still taking like commissions from classical groups, and I'm still doing my weird experiments at home, like I mentioned earlier. So yeah, that's how it works best.
Still playing the water phone somewhere in the corner.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Hey,
Especially
Mark.
on Halloween. That's the on my porch for the kiddos.
There you
Scares them
go.
every time. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Mark. Well, thank you so much for taking some time and talking to us about your career and about On Swift Horses. And congratulations on everything that's going on in your career. And can't wait to see
Thanks.
you are working on next.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Yeah.